Okay, so one of the main questions that I get on my vertical jump programs is how do I do this in season? So that is a great question because to truly make a transformation, it's a full, year-round process. It is not train for a month here, stop, pick it up for 2 months there, stop. You truly have to stay consistent month to month. And the problem is basketball season is pretty long. And what's worse is most people are then going into club ball, or if you're a volleyball player or, football player, whatever you are, your seasons are now longer and there's almost no off season because of AAU. And so if you don't learn how to train year round through all of your tournaments and all of your games, you're never going to truly transform your athleticism. All right, so rule number one of in-season training is prioritize strength training over plyometrics and agility. So you guys know I love plyometrics and agility, but it's built into your sport. So if you're a basketball player or volleyball player, you're getting a lot of cuts. So you're already getting agility. You're getting a lot of jumping. So you're already getting plyometrics. It's built into your sport. And so if we're already getting that on the court, what are we not getting on the court? And that's strength. That's true resistance training. And so when we hit the weight room, first of all, we're going to have to cut our program smaller. We're going to have to get more efficient with our workouts because we don't have as much time or energy. And so for the most part, we're going to cut out a lot of the plyometrics and agility, and we're just going to focus on strength training. As people continue through the season, they get weaker and weaker and weaker, and their vertical goes down and down and down. And a lot of times people kind of start to shift from fast twitch muscle fibers more towards slow twitch muscle fibers because the sport has a lot of endurance demands and you're not getting that strength training. So one thing that we have to make sure we're doing in the weight room is maintaining our strength, or ideally building our strength during season. So I need you to have the ability to try to follow the program as close as you can, but also pay attention to your body. And in season, if we need to cut out all of the plyometrics to stay healthy, then let's do that. Okay, so you got to kind of figure out how hard is your coach pushing you in practice in season. How many minutes are you going to play? Because if you're not being killed in practice and you're not playing, tons of minutes, you can probably do the program as is, even better. You can get better year-round results. But for those of you who are being pushed really hard in practice and or you're playing a lot of minutes, you will want to either completely cut out the plyometrics or cut back the volume by at least half. And so what I mean by volume is sets times reps. So I like to just cut back on the reps. So if there's a plyometric exercise that was like 3 sets of 6 reps, you would do 3 sets of 3 reps, right? So the intensity remains high, but we cut back on the total volume. And that's a very good way to still incorporate some plyos and still maintain that rate of force development without beating down your body too much. Okay, rule number 2 of in-season training is always prioritize intensity over volume. And everybody does this backwards. So most coaches say, in season, we're just going to go light and we're going to go high reps. So they get in, 3 sets of 15, 3 sets of 20 with a little lighter of a weight. And the problem is, in season, especially like for basketball players, we're getting a lot of endurance through our sport. And with high endurance comes more slow twitch characteristics. So we're getting rid of some of our fast twitch and we're shifting them more towards slow twitch. And now what happens with super high rep strength training, like 3 sets of 15, 3 sets of 20, again, that's an endurance demand. So the body's adaptation is to get rid of more fast twitch and shift them towards slow twitch. And so people can really become slower through the season by doing that. So I always say intensity is number 1. And intensity, when I talk about strength training, we're talking about the weight. We're talking about the load. So high intensity would be a high weight. Low volume would mean low sets or low reps. So volume is sets times reps. So when I say cut the volume back by half, what I usually do is I keep the sets the same and I cut the reps down by half. So if the exercise was 3 sets of 10, in season, you would cut it down to 3 sets of 5, right? But you wouldn't go down in weight. And so when you introduce that same high intensity to your body, it remembers, oh yes, I do have this central nervous system drive that activates these big fast twitch muscle fibers, and it then maintains those muscle fibers throughout the season. We absolutely need that to be sharp late in the season. And so that when we pick up this training program after season, we're here and we can go here instead of being down here and then having that uphill battle. Now, if you're one of those people who's trying to push through and you're gonna do plyometrics and agility in season because your practices aren't beating you down or you're not playing a lot of minutes, well, you want to cut those back significantly and you want to keep the intensity high. So with plyometrics, what I mean by intensity is intent. So your max intent. And that means like every single rep you are jumping as high as you can. I would never want you in season to do a drill where you're doing like 3 sets of 15 jumps, because after rep 5 you're not at 100%. You're working at 95, and then you drop down to 90%, and then 85%, and at that point it becomes more of an endurance thing. That's the last thing that we want in season. And so I would rather see you do like 3 really good jumps where you're truly jumping as high as possible. I don't need you to get fatigued. I need you to introduce your body to max intensity, to max intent, so that we can maintain or maybe even build our fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay, rule number 3 is you have to learn how to train the day before the game and on game day. And this is something that NBA players have mastered, and they've learned that they have to master this because their season is so long that if they don't train on game day, that's 82 plus days throughout the year that they're not doing strength training, and their body just goes to trash. I mean, they can't maintain a strong, athletic, explosive body if they're skipping 82 days out of the year. And so what I need you to understand is that training on game day is okay. Now, you don't want to randomly start training on game day because yes, you're going to be sore if you randomly pick it up. But if you gradually ease into it, where through preseason you're strength training every day, well, it just becomes the norm for you to strength train and then go to practice or go do your skills training, and your body just adapts to that. And so come game day, your body actually would expect nothing less. Your body would actually be shocked if you didn't work out and you went and played. Your body is used to having that strength training stimulus and then going out and playing. And so I'm not saying go kill yourself on game day. Take your volume down by half. You shouldn't be doing anything that causes fatigue. So let's say you're doing a set of squats. Well, if you're feeling fatigue at 5, that's too many reps. Stay at 3. Keep a high weight, keep it low rep. So you're doing enough to really stimulate the fast twitch muscle fibers and the nervous system, but you're not doing enough to where you're really getting tired. All right, so you got to be very smart about training on game day. You don't want to overdo it. But again, the body adapts to any stimulus that we place on it. And so when you place that constant stimulus of strength training every day, your body gets used to it and it would expect nothing less on game day. Now, when it comes to training on game day, there's different options. You could get up early and hit the session and then have plenty of time to recover. Or like most players in the NBA, they'll come in at like 3 o'clock and they'll hit a good little session for 30 minutes. And then they'll kind of go have their meal or whatever and maybe foam roll and stretch and do their thing, their normal routine, and then they'll get warmed up. And so you're not necessarily going strength training straight into the game. You want to give yourself a little break generally. Or the way that some NBA players like to do it is actually come back in after the game. So if you're somebody who is playing a lot of minutes, but you get done with the game and you still feel like kind of amped up and you're not necessarily tired. If anything, you're more energized after the game. I know I was always one of those guys that my adrenaline was high and I wanted to go do something after the game. Great. Ask your coach if he could open up the weight room and see if you can sneak in 30 to 45 minutes after the game. That's a really good way to do it. And it also sort of shows in a way your dedication and your determination when you're in the weight room lifting after a game. That's something that the coaches and your teammates are going to look at you and be like, wow, this guy really wants it. So that's a good option as well. Okay, rule number 4 is choose concentric exercises instead of eccentric exercises. Now, training the day before games, we have to really limit the exercises that make us sore. And so generally, it's going to be eccentric training. The majority of soreness, over 90% of soreness, comes from the eccentric component of exercise. And so the eccentric component, think about the lowering portion where the muscle is lengthening, and then the upward motion is the concentric. The upward motion, the concentric, doesn't make us sore. So we want to focus on exercises that have a big concentric portion, but no eccentric portion. So if you look at something like a Romanian deadlift, that's a long, slow, eccentric exercise. There's a long lowering portion, and that is going to make you super sore. Plyometric exercises are a huge eccentric component. So like a depth drop where you're dropping off a box and then getting off the ground. There's a ton of eccentric stress on the body. So we want to stay away from those type of exercises and move towards concentric exercises. So something like a deadlift from the floor. So think about like a trap bar deadlift or a barbell deadlift where it's starting on the floor, so we pick it up from the floor, the hard part is on the way up, and then we can just kind of drop it back down to the floor if you're comfortable with that, or kind of guide it down without slowly lowering it. We can kind of just drop it back down to the floor in a safe manner. And so we don't get a big eccentric stimulus there. Something like, instead of the depth drop, if you're doing plyometrics in season, you can simply move to a non-counter movement jump where I'm sitting down on a box and I'm jumping up to another box, right? Because that's all concentric. There's no eccentric component to that. Exercises like a step up, where the hard part is the way up. On the way down, we can kind of relax and just bring ourselves back down to the floor without controlling down and really using a lot of muscular effort. So there's really a lot of ways that you can incorporate more concentric exercises, but really stay away from those exercises that make you sore. Rear foot elevated split squats generally make people pretty sore. Romanian deadlifts generally make people pretty sore. So you want to stick to more like conventional deadlifts where we can lower the weight or drop the weight. We want to stick to stuff like step ups instead of a rear foot elevated split squat. We want to stick to non-counter movement jumps instead of depth drops. And so we can still push ourselves and get a really good workout the day before the game and still not be too sore come game day. Okay, rule number 5 is get back to the normal program any chance that we get in season. And so what we're always staying away from high intensity sessions is the day before the game and the day of the game. We're going to go a little bit lighter because we do want to limit soreness. But let's say the day after a game, you're looking at the schedule and you got 3 days off. Well, that first day, you better get a really good session. That's an opportunity to sort of go back to the normal program and don't cut back on volume. Do everything as is listed in the program. And so, yeah, you might be sore for that next day or maybe even 2 days after, but you're not limiting your performance in a game. So any chance that we get where we have 3 days in between a game, of course, the more trained you are, the quicker you recover. So some of you, 2 days between a game, you can hit a good session where you're not cutting back on volume, at least on the strength training side. And you're getting a great session, and then the next day you're going a little lighter. Maybe you're focusing on more mobility, and through that mobility you're going to kind of get rid of a lot of that soreness, and then come game day you can get another really light session and you can get more mobility, and you're going to be nice and recovered and stimulated and ready for game day. But it's super important that you don't enter this like super maintenance mode that everybody enters once they're in season, and they're like, look, I always have to cut back. That's not true. You just have to pick and choose, and you got to be smart about when you choose to go hard and when you choose to kind of put on the brakes and enter maintenance mode. But look, it is completely okay for you to build athleticism throughout season. That's completely okay, but you do have to be very smart about it. And there's no exact program that I could write for you. I can't say, look, do this on this day, because every team is different. And every team pushes athletes to a different level. Every athlete is at a different level on their training age and what they're used to. And so what I can do is give you this program that you guys are on, and you have to go in and figure out, okay, how do I make the modifications myself so that I can go as hard as possible without beating myself down. I want to stay healthy and I want to prevent injuries with this program, but I also want to keep getting more athletic, because transforming your athleticism is a year-round thing. It can't just be part-time. Okay, so those are the 5 rules. If you pay attention to those 5 rules, I think you can get some good results throughout the season. Now, if you finish season and you look back on it and you say, my program was pretty choppy, meaning I kind of did take, a week off here, or I took several days off and I just wasn't able to get the high intensity workouts in, you should go back to month 1 and start fresh on the program for your off season, because you're going to get a lot better gains if you go back and you do it consecutively. It's so much better for you to finish the program consecutively, or at least get like 6 straight months consecutive from phase 1, than to constantly just drop off and then pick up where you were at, and then drop off and pick up where you were at. So do the best job that you can at killing the program during season, but keep in mind that after season you may need to revert back to month 1, start fresh, and just hit it hard.